So I was going to have comments about the maps. So I'll just do them now. I started this redistricting process with 2 points in mind. One, allow the people living on Connecticut Avenue and Cleveland Park an opportunity to be represented by someone in an ANC that included their main street right outside of their front door. And two, try to implement a rational assignment of ANCs that prioritize proximity to centers of population and activity. Those are my two things going into this. I have previously met just two of my fellow task force members when I started, but almost immediately found that there was this common shared point of view that I think Brian just really well articulated. I'd like to say how impressed I've been with the dedication and seriousness of the members of the task force that have, they've demonstrated during this process. And I really have enjoyed working with all of you. We have been through a lot of maps and heard a lot of great feedback. And as a task force, we've addressed our constraints. And we've also seen, looking at the current map, what happens when those constraints are ignored and implemented in non-transparent ways. 8 weeks into this, I am certain there's no perfect map, period. Quick point on AU. AU, as we've said, because it is a wholly contained unit, could go in a number of different ANCs. We've heard from AU, and they want to be in 3E. And so I think we have to listen to that. They've made that clear. On Cleveland Park, over a week ago, I suggested a compromise to extend the western border of the proposed ANC 3C from 34th Street to 36th Street in Cleveland Park. I think it garnered a grand total of 3 emails of support. So that went over like a lead balloon. But now we have a completely different map. So that compromise is for a map that doesn't exist anymore. But now we have a new map. And I really applaud the members of the task force that over the last week listened to everybody and hit the reset button. Because it was an iterative process, but it also let us down some cul-de-sacs. And by restarting it, we have an opportunity to look at this anew, and I'm looking at this anew. So I'm sort of back where we started. Cleveland Park has been represented by 2 ANCs for as long as there have been ANCs. The Cleveland Park Historic District has been represented by 2 ANCs for as long as there has been an historic district. The boundaries of ANCs don't alter the status of a recognized neighborhood area. Much of what ANCs do month in and month out are specific to individual properties and events. Proximity will give the first voice to the ANC where the property is located, but it doesn't exclude other input. As Phil Mendelson said during the redistricting process 10 years ago, quote, "If an ANC is affected, it is entitled to notice and great weight," unquote. The law doesn't say that ANCs get notice and great weight if the issue is inside of its boundaries. The law says that if you're affected, you get notice and great weight. Mendelson went on to say that many times when he was a commissioner, his ANC would weigh in on issues outside of his ANC because the issue affected the residents of his ANC, which happened to be ANC 3C. Those instances of cross ANC concern they're not a monthly thing. They're not common. But when they arise, ANCs outside of the location can weigh in. Similarly, ANCs with overlapping issues can weigh in collectively or separately. We saw this with the reversible lanes and bike lanes on Connecticut Avenue. We saw this with renovations at Hearst. Solutions to Reno Road in the past and in the future will require cross ANC collaboration. And so when I hear statements that our schools, our police, our fire, and the tree canopy are under threat because of what we were doing, I can't take these protests seriously. 8 historic districts in DC are represented by 2 or more ANCs. We've mentioned Cleveland Park and Capitol Hill. There's also Meridian Hill, Massachusetts Avenue, Greater U Street, Greater 14th Street, the Financial District, and Kingman Park. Some cover as many as 4 ANCs, and some cross ward boundaries. They survive and they thrive because local ANCs review changes to properties within their borders and because HPO and HPRB ensure compatibility. I also think that this proposed division between 3A and 3C allows for a developed historic preservation competence within these two ANCs, something that didn't exist between 3C and 3F, a split we've lived with for 30 plus years. The two ANCs will have 5 commissioners from Cleveland Park, up from 3 today, each representing a part of the historic district. Lastly, I'd like to go back to my first presentation I made on February 8th, where I discussed corridors and the visual of the Connecticut-Wisconsin Avenue corridors cutting vertically through our ward. And I'd note that the distance between these corridors is greatest in Cleveland Park. As I look at these corridors, I ask, would people expect residents on or east of Connecticut Avenue in Chevy Chase to be represented by an ANC that covered the heart of Friendship Heights? Or how about people living on or west of Wisconsin Avenue being represented by an ANC that covered Forest Hills? I think most people would say no. I don't think most people would say that the residents nearest to Wisconsin and Connecticut Avenue, I do think people would say that the residents who live closest to Wisconsin and Connecticut Avenue should have first voice over what happens near them. Yet somehow the expectation is that people living in Ordway Gardens and Quebec House be covered as the same ANC as Wisconsin Avenue and vice versa. Wisconsin Avenue deserves an ANC that is primarily focused on what is happening there, populated by the residents there. And the same goes for Connecticut Avenue. Proximity matters, but I have no doubt that there will be both cooperation and unsolicited input across ANCs here and elsewhere, as it should be. I would recommend that the next Ward 3 council member, whoever that may be, play an active role in more intentional organization and collaboration across the ward's ANCs, perhaps meeting regularly with the chairs. The task force plan is a good plan. It's not perfect, but it's good, and I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Bob. I think Troy